Welcome to the next episode of It's Your Time to Shine, a podcast about being a mom in a modern world. My name is Jaspreet Kaur, and with me is my good friend, fabulous fashion blogger, Reena Sekhon.
That was not me. I don't just walk into the room and complain.
You have such a delicate cry. I love it, Reena.
It's my new war cry for when I pee myself.
How are you? And I feel like, okay, you brought up Depends and you brought up peeing on yourself. Like, what's on your mind? Let's just get this out.
What's on my mind is I'm always worried that my bladder is going to fall out of my vagina. And will there be any advance warning, or will I just be like in Whole Foods at the Gorian de Gotora?
So, okay, well, in case our listeners haven't figured it out yet, this is super exciting for me to be able to sit next to you and with your little one, a stone's throw away, because the last time you were on the podcast, we talked about IVF and the journey of fertility. Mm-hmm. And since then, you have had like the most amazing miracle. And I say, like, I paused a little bit when I said miracle because I like what you and your husband said. It's a little bit of a miracle and a little bit of science.
Yeah.
Do you want to, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, I'm crying now, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think crying is good, and someone else is crying too. But this is like a live podcast.
Yeah.
Can I hold her?
Yeah.
You know, Joe Rogan has people on his podcast and they cry sometimes. I've done this a couple times. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. What was your most memorable moment?
Oh, how miserable I was.
Really?
That is like the most memorable thing, is that the pregnancy was just super difficult. Like, you think that like the most memorable thing would be like how I found out and the feelings, but the constant was like, wow, IVF was hard, but this feels impossible.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was so nauseous the entire pregnancy, which was like 7.5 months. I was throwing up every single day, and then getting gestational diabetes, and then being like having to like monitor and give myself more injections. Not like having a total of 3,000 injections during the course of this process was not like enough. Mm-hmm. It was like, here's some more injections just to top off.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's just.
But they knew you were so good at it. So they were like, hey, she can handle this.
Yes. There's the bright side of Jaspreet that we all know and love. And we can't even hate her for it.
The funny thing is that, okay, first of all, point to note, your daughter is like 1 month old and she's smiling right now.
Yes.
That's awesome. The funny thing is my pregnancies, I had 3 of them. They were super easy. Never threw up. You know, I was totally comfortable. I'm just kidding. That's pregnancy, Reena. Come on. What were you expecting?
Well, everybody, like, because you hear about people and they're just like,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not shushing you by any means.
Yeah. Like, you would hear people and they'd be like, oh my God, being pregnant is the most amazing thing. Like, oh, I loved being pregnant. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. Like, yeah. I'm going to get preferred seating on BART, which is our public transportation in the Bay Area. Uh-huh. I'm going to be able to park in the place at the mall where it says for expectant mothers.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to eat a wide variety of food.
Right. And burn it all off because you're pregnant.
Because I'm growing this child.
Yes.
You know, none of that happened for me. Like, I never left the house because anytime I would stand up, I would want to vomit. Anytime I would get in the car, I would want to vomit. Anytime I looked at anything other than the inside of my eyelids, I'd want to vomit. Mm-hmm. So, like, it was really difficult. And then I would run into people like, pregnancy was so hard. I had this postnasal drip. I'm going to pause right now because there's like a bunch of beeps that you guys would be applying in here. I was like, postnasal drip. Like, yeah. Let's talk about like the insides of my body are coming out, you know? And then also like Aria, when she was inside, like you would think gravity would pull her down, but I was like, you know, she's got her father's sense of direction. She wanted to come up and out of my throat.
That's so funny.
I was like, great. She's
like pushing your insides like even more.
She's like, I'm coming out, Mom. And I'm like, not that way.
I think she was like, I'm coming up. That's awesome. I like the I can empathize with you because I know morning sickness. I had differently with all 3 of my pregnancies, and I didn't have it the full term, you know, but I had it for like a good 6 months with my son, and everything, like the smell of bronte, like someone put kyo on the tava, and I'd be like, what is wrong with you guys? All you do is eat all day.
See, but that's still not even that bad.
No,
like,
it's
you know,
not.
because it was like a room away.
Yeah.
My husband would burp in my face. And then it would trigger like, you know, a 90-minute... I vomited so much I had to go to the hospital that day because I got so dehydrated. And if he would not have burped in my face, I would not have had to go to the hospital. I could have...
90 minutes you would have gotten back. And that $400 bill.
Yes.
Going to the emergency room.
Yes. And then, like, you know, there are people there with, like, all kinds of things broken. They're like, why are you here? And I'm like, I can't stop vomiting.
Aw.
You know? And it just didn't seem like that was, like, a severe enough issue to be in the ER.
Yeah.
But it is a severe issue when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
Because we don't want the attention or we don't want to inconvenience anybody. And you're like, I'm taking up a hospital bed that should be for somebody who's really, like, needs to be in the ER. You know, so then you're like, it's okay. Like, I'm fine. Like, I just want to make sure the baby's heart was still there. And, like, I can go home now.
That part really is unfortunate. Now that you have the baby and she's outside and you get to gaze upon her, do you look back on those months and think, oh, that was worth it? Or are you like, I'm going to invent something so that...
I'm so appalled that so many women have gone through this process and it is still the same process like it was for hundreds and hundreds of years. And we have not been able to streamline or to fix anything. Like,
we haven't improved anything.
We haven't improved anything. They were like, the same experience my grandma had is the same experience I'm having. Like, they're like, oh yeah, you're going to just pee on yourself all the time. And it's totally fine. And you're like, how has this gone on for centuries?
Yes.
And we have just like learned to accept it. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. And we have just like accepted that this is a way of life, that this is just like a part of it. So I'm appalled from like a women's health perspective that we are not providing better services to us. Like, we were unlucky that our daughter was in the NICU for a few weeks because she was born early. And we had all the support staff from the hospital. But there are women that after 48 hours, 36 hours have to go home and they've got to deal with that. And that is crazy, you know? And I was, you know, and there's all this like discussion about postpartum depression and how, you know, there is a cure for it. It's a 6-week IV course. It costs $34,000. And it's crazy because how do we not expect women to get depressed or overwhelmed or anxious or whatever when you're physically not able to get up and care for this human being that like needs you and is dependent on you, and you develop all this guilt and you're like, I'm not a great mom. I'm ruining my daughter. So obviously you're going to get depressed. The most well-balanced person is going to get depressed, right? So instead of spending $34,000 and 6 weeks of your time after you've probably been suffering with it for like several weeks or months or whatever, why not just let the families stay in the hospital for like 5 days until they're ready to go home? Why are we as women being like, yes, send me home after 36 hours?
Yeah. And why is it like they make a big deal when you do stay in the hospital? It's like something's wrong, right?
Yes. Oh my God. So Mandeep, my husband, is like was really emotional. It still bothers him. Arya's 4 week or a month and 1 day now. And just yesterday, Mandeep was telling me, he's like, or the day before yesterday, actually, he said, I felt so unwelcomed at the hospital.
Really?
He goes, after you gave birth, he's like, 3 hours after you gave birth, like we were in this really nice, luxurious birthing room. And they were like, we need to move you. And he was like, I felt like they were like kicking us out. Like, why not give us a night to just like not have to like pack up our things? Like, everything is scattered.
Yeah.
Like, and our daughter went straight into the NICU, had breathing problems and like.
And you're panicked. You don't know, like, is she okay? And then on top of that, they're like, can you please pack up your toothbrush?
Our daughter was in the NICU for like a total of 14 days. While we were staying at the hospital, they have like a policy where if you're a NICU mom or NICU parents, like you can stay at the hospital if they have open beds.
Okay.
Which they had. So I was staying there because I was pumping, and I would go and drop off my breast milk like every 3-4 hours, whatever I could do. And Mandeep was walking through the hallway and walked past the nursing station. And one of the nurses said, you guys are still here?
Why would she say that?
And Mandeep was like, yeah, our daughter's in the NICU. Where else would we be?
Yeah.
And why would you even say that to me?
Yeah.
Like, you know our daughter's in the NICU. You think we're just going to go home and like binge watch Netflix and then be like, yeah, let us know when she's ready. We'll come back and pick her up. He was like, it was just so weird. And it was like every day you'd have to check and be like, do we get kicked out of our room today? And then we were thinking, well, what are we going to do? Like, if they do kick us out, like, where are we going to go? Like, obviously we have a house, but it's so far away from the hospital, you know? And it was just so weird that we had to even think about that.
Yeah. And then to put into perspective, I won't even leave my kids like in ballet class or karate class. Like, I won't leave and like drop them off and leave. I'll either sit in the parking lot with my other kids or sit like in the front. Why would I leave my brand new newborn with a bunch of strangers?
Yeah.
And just, and just like be like, okay, well, I'll be back in a couple days.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So the whole, like, I would want to, like, avoid the shift nurse because I was afraid that if she saw me, that she'd be like, hey, we're going to ask you to move. And I was kind of just, like, avoiding her.
Yeah.
And then all the while, I'm stressed about my milk supply, stressed about the health of my daughter. I'm stressed because my own health and, like, I'm just leaking urine.
Yeah.
Not even leaking urine. A cup to 2 cups of urine just flies out of me at a moment's notice while I'm standing or I'm sitting, and I cannot stop it. Like, so these are all the things I'm dealing with. And I'm like, let me go the long way and hide from the shift nurse so she doesn't see me and ask me to move.
You're like employing all of the, like, our company's going through a reorganization, and you're employing all those tactics of like, I'm going to avoid the break room and the CEO's office and not make eye contact. And like, I have to go to the doctor. I'll be back. You're like,
obviously people are going to get depressed. Why don't we just spend like $5,000 and give women and families and fathers the support that they need for that first week to heal, to recover, to get acclimated. And like, the nursing staff there has so many resources, and they know like what are some of the things, like, oh yeah, this is normal. And there are
like diaper rash. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
This is what you do.
This is what you do. This is level 1 care. This is level 2. Here are some creative things you can do. And instead of just sending you home with what to expect in the first year.
Yeah. I'm like a really high functioning mousy. I just want to point that out to you right now. So you were telling me yesterday about the birthing story. And one of the things that I loved about it was that you had 2 friends in the birthing room with you.
Yes.
And can I just tell you, like, first of all, it's beautiful that they were willing to be there and to help you. I am so like embarrassed about myself and my own performance and how I would like react to a birthing situation. And, I wasn't even awake for one of my births. As you know, I had an emergency C-section. But for the other 2, there was a lot of anxiety and fear and nervousness. And the fact that you were just like, oh yeah, I'm going to have my 2 best friends and my husband in there. So inspirational. So how did you decide to do that? And then what was the impact of having them with you?
Okay. So one, my husband was definitely planning to be there, and I was okay with him being there. Okay. Even though
you were like, I'll allow it.
I'll allow it. Even though he's a terrible driver and he has a terrible sense of direction, I was willing for him to be in the room to like help me navigate this thing that I had never done before.
Yeah.
I have a best friend, and she's an OB, and I really wanted her there because I was really nervous about dying during childbirth because, as we know, that happens, and the process of giving birth really hasn't changed.
Right.
And I actually have a cousin that died during childbirth, and so I was like, that's actually not really a far-fetched idea that it can happen.
Yeah, 1 in 1,000 women in America die of childbirth every year. So it's not far-fetched at all. It's actually quite a large percentage if you consider all the other advancements that have been made in medical technology. So no, I totally agree that.
And so at this hospital, they deliver about 100 babies a month. So that's 1,200 babies a year. So that means that there's definitely 1 person dying at that hospital a year. And I'm not trying to be that 1 person.
Yeah, no.
And considering like everything that we had gone through to get pregnant, like it felt like we had every complication possible. And then we got pregnant, and then the pregnancy was just super difficult. And then we had an early labor, which is also like, it was like everything that you felt like could go wrong. I mean, it wasn't really wrong. It was just not the best.
It was not the norm that they had prepared you for from a timeline perspective.
Yeah. So I was already kind of like, yep, like I need all the resources that I have access to. And we have another friend who had a wife in the hospital, and she passed away, not of childbirth, but mistakes can happen and things can happen. And so I wanted as many people that could help me through that process, help me and be there. And thankfully, one of my best friends is an OB, and I wanted her to be there so that she could actually advocate on my behalf of things that needed to happen. Because I don't know.
Yeah. It's your first time going through it.
Not only that, but like we also missed our Lamaze class by 1 week. Like our daughter came early, and I didn't even know what could
You didn't have the basics down.
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew what happens on television was it's like, like that's what I knew. That was the extent of it. And somebody cuts the umbilical cord, and sometimes that's the husband, or sometimes he passes out. Like that's all I knew.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to be there so that she knew what were the possibilities, what could happen. And God forbid if anything did happen to me and I did die and it was by some mistake at the hospital, that she would be there and she would have access to that information and she could help my husband navigate that process. And if something did happen and I did die, I didn't want him to be there by himself with our daughter.
Yeah.
Like, you know, why are we not thinking about what's like, I would feel terrible. So I was like worst case planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have this other friend. She's my best friend. I'm the goddaughter to her first daughter. And she was very insistent on coming. And I was like, no, it's totally fine. We have our medical professional who's coming. Like, that's all we need.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, you need to tell her not to come if you don't want her there. And I was like, you know, I don't really know what I want, what I don't want. But like, let the resources arrive and then we can weed out what we want, what we don't want.
You can make the game day decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so great having her there. One, she brought me all this like post-birth stuff that I would need, like nursing bras, nursing again, baby came early, didn't have any time to prepare for anything, didn't know what I need, what I didn't need.
Right.
I mean, we left the house when my water broke with a overnight bag with a toothbrush in it. That's what I packed to go to the hospital.
Okay. The one thing they could actually give you at the hospital is what you took.
But I was like, that's what we left the house with. This huge bag with a toothbrush and toothpaste. Okay. That was it.
Very good.
Okay. And, you know, long story short, if either Lily and my friend Angela were not there, I think that we would have either ended up in a C-section. The birth would have been really traumatic. We had a crazy nurse that was picking fights with my friend that was the OB because of her own insecurities. And
of having another medical professional in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Angela, who's Caucasian, looks Caucasian, was able to check her. That this nurse was telling me the way that I should get motivated to push was to get mad. She's like, get mad, get angry. And I just was like, I'm so excited to be here. Yeah. Like, granted, I'm in pain, but I'm so excited. And why am I going to get mad at my daughter for doing what she's supposed to be doing? I'm so excited. She's not trying to crawl out my throat anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she's going the right direction. Why am I mad at her? I'm not mad at her. I'm not mad at her.
And like, we want to set a like tone of positivity for our children. Like, why would we start the birthing process like with a roar, right?
Yeah. So I couldn't tell Lily that because she was already picking fights with Lily about, you know, you're an OB, I'm a nurse, I have more years of experience on you. So I told Angela, I was like, Angela was like, so we would like to have a more positive experience and more positive affirmations. And she was very direct, very polite, and she stopped.
And you think like because she was white and not brown, that she accepted that?
Definitely. I definitely, like...
Yeah, that's disappointing and also, like, life.
Yeah.
Because we have to use our allies, you know?
Yeah. And so Angela was great, and she's, you know, she's, like, super positive, and she would be in my ear. She's like, Reena, you got this! You got this! And I, at a point, I was just like, Angela? It's like, I just need quiet. And I don't think that I was aggressive or I didn't cuss or anything. I love to cuss, but I was very conscious that I did not want to like cuss at anybody for them just trying to help me. And everybody loves me and everybody was just trying to do the best that they could do in the way that they knew how to do it. Yeah. So I just was like, hey, I just need quiet. And I guess Mandeep was saying, Angela then was like, I don't want to get in Reena's way. So she would hide behind my head. And when I would need water or ice chips, her hands would just reach over and just give these things to me. And I was so exhausted that I had stopped speaking English and I would only speak Punjabi. And Angela...
You're like, all pretenses are gone now. Like, I'm going back to the mother tongue. Because you can just use one or two words in Punjabi. Yeah. And it's just how you say it. And people know, like, is she mad? Is she happy? Yeah. Is she good?
So I would be like, ulti. I was like, Minu ulti hai. And like, Angela would be like, oh, get the barf box, you know, and she'd shove that in front of me. And I just throw up. And I would throw up. And like, I was so exhausted. I had just given up on trying to like throw up into the box that I would just then throw up on myself. And Angela was like so amazing. And she would try to catch it or like move the tray herself.
Yeah.
And if I did throw up on myself, she was cleaning it up
Yeah.
and she was going around the room, like patting Mandeep's sweat, giving him water and, giving Lily the support that she needed and like holding her, subbing in and out for her. So Angela was great. She was like the pit stop, like when the car pulls in and everybody goes in and changes the tires and does this and like pats, like that's who she was. She was that background support. So Lily was great from a medical perspective. And then my husband was great because every time I'd look at him, he was crying.
Yeah.
Which was so helpful for me because I was like, this means something.
Yeah.
And like, it gave me so much like strength to see him cry because I was like, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for us and we can do this. Like in that moment, all the years of IVF, all the miscarriages, all the surgeries, all the injections, all of that was in his eyes. And I was like, I can do this for us. Yeah. I can do this. And I could see how much he loved me because it wasn't about like, you're a host body and you're going to give me this child. It was like, I'm scared. What's happening? Are you dying? Like, is this real? Does this happen? Is this normal?
Yeah.
I don't want you to die. I want this baby, but I don't want you to die. I want you here with me.
Yeah.
Like, don't let anything happen to her.
Right.
And I needed to see that.
That's beautiful.
I needed to know that it like, even though we've been married for 12 years, I needed to see that he did not want me to die.
None of us want you to die, Reena.
Nobody, I know, but I just needed to see that. And so he was...
It's like a humanity, right? It's like a little glimpse of humanity that lets you know like, oh, yes, this is normal. Like other people know that I'm hurting and it's hard.
Yeah.
And it makes it kind of like, it's okay. We're going to do this together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have an audience member of one.
But she is cheering for us, and I love it. And also, poor Mandeep, like you didn't get to go to the birthing class, and we get our husbands and the spouses in our lives, like they get their information from like This Is Us, and it's like freaking #lies, fake news, and so they think like, oh, you're gonna go in there, and then there's gonna be like a wonderful like here's 12 years of marriage montage, and then the baby's born.
Yeah,
no, that's not what happens.
So, fast forward to the end of the birthing that night. Mandeep and I were sitting there talking, and he was upset that Lily was there and that Angela was there. Not upset that, like, I don't like them, but he had this vision from This Is Us.
Yes.
That only the husband is in there. The husband does everything.
Right. I'm
going to be the backbone. I'm going to be the quarterback. Yeah. I'm going to be telling the nurses what to do.
I'm going to be the hero.
I'm going to be the hero.
Yes.
And I was like, I had to like break it down. It's like, honey, you are not a doctor. Like you are not a nurse. You're not even like a like, what do they call the orderlies? You're not even an orderly.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't know what's up. And he's like, but I wanted to be the one that was doing the countdown. I wanted to be the one that was like, that you were asking for. I was like, but you don't know.
Right.
Like, you don't know. I said, what I needed from you is what I couldn't get from Lily. Lily was great, but if I was in pain and I was not feeling good, I was not going to look at Lily's face because Lily was rolling her eyes, or she was on Instagram,
because she delivers like 10 babies a day. So she's like, okay, this is the part where we just have to wait.
Yeah.
Or this is the part where she's got to labor. Right?
Yeah. But Mandeep was like the person whose eyes I could look into, and there was comfort that he was hurting for me.
Yeah.
Or that
and he's rooting for you.
He's rooting for me.
I love that you like found two friends that are on the two opposite sides of the spectrum. One was the heart and one was the brain. And you were like, heart and brain, please join me for my delivery because I will need both of you today. That's awesome.
And then evolution next day after the birth, and Mandeep had time to like, come to terms with everything that had happened. He goes, there is no way that we would have ended up with a vaginal delivery as well as it went without Lily and Angela being there. It would have been a disaster because our nurse was terrible.
Yeah. So you think it was more about his expectations? Like he had dreamt what the day would be like and it wasn't like that. And so his initial shock was like, oh no, I thought the script went this way. And I didn't, we didn't deliver it that way. But in the end, he is grateful and happy that it went
so amazing, so happy. And he loves Angela and he loves Lily. And he's so excited that they were there when our daughter was born. And you're right. And one of the things that he said was like,
Okay, I want to ask you one more question and then we'll wrap up. You have been doing this fun thing with people who come to visit the baby. You have this book. Can you tell me what this little activity is and how you're making memories for her?
So the book is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. And it profiles, it's got one-pagers about a variety of women.
Yeah, so what are you doing with it?
So one of my really good friends, who is a woman, gave it to me. And I asked her, because she's an avid reader, I said, I want you to read the first story out of it to her. She's like, no, like that should be you and Mandeep. Like you should read your first story. I was like, no. I want you to read one. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to read the redheaded pirate because she's a redhead.
Oh,
and
okay.
then I was like, I want you to sign your name and the date. And that way when Arya gets older, she can read the book herself and she'll see who read her the story to her, and it'll give her insight to these women.
Yes.
And so she'll have a book of memories about like, hey, this woman represents this person. Because everybody's choosing a story that reflects them.
Yes.
And so it gives her insight into who these people are.
So your friend Shay read a story about a redheaded pirate.
Yes.
And she's redheaded, so she like maybe connected with her on some level.
Yes.
And then should we tell our listeners what I did?
Yes. Yeah. Which was not how everybody else did it, but that's not a shock to your listeners.
So my daughter has these books. There's two of them. She has these books, and she actually has read them to me in the morning on the way to school. She will read a page and say, "Mama, guess what?" And what I did was,
she read some generic story that didn't even apply to her. And she's like, whatever, I'm just going to do this just to fulfill this activity. And like the one thing she saw was like, oh, this person's from Texas. I'm from Texas. Great.
That's right. I'm not even from Texas. I just live in Texas, but I saw the word Texas. Yeah. So I read about Lozen, a warrior. And afterwards I felt really embarrassed that people had like taken days and weeks to determine which one they were gonna read. So I happened to find the story of Frida Kahlo in there, who is a Mexican artist and someone I just really adore. And so I ended up reading that one. So my lack of decision-making there, poor decision-making, actually resulted in me being in this book twice.
Which is really funny because Angela, who's come over multiple times, and I've been like, hey, can you pick? She's like, I need time to think about. Yeah. And it's been a month and one day now since Ari's been born. And she still has not picked somebody because she wants to pick the perfect one that applies to her.
And she's probably like a very thoughtful mother. And I am a very like, let's get this done. I have a bias for action. I'm like, all right, you need what? Okay, let's do it. Oh, that was probably a bad idea. But I do what every great surgeon does, Reena. You make a mistake, you quickly change course and do the right thing. Do you have a story picked out that you're going to read for her?
No, I haven't. And I've been thinking about maybe just adding my own story and reading that to her.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, what is one takeaway that really has stuck with you that you want to share?
I want to say one thing.
Oh yeah, please.
I am so in college and in high school, I had a lot of like male friends. Mm-hmm. And then through this IVF cycle, her journey, I have really built a tribe of women. And I didn't know how I was going to deal or cope or manage having a newborn. And my tribe of women have come through like nothing I knew could be possible. I had today a friend that just dropped off breakfast and fresh Starbucks on my doorstep and didn't want to bother me. I had another friend who like flew in from out of town to help me learn how to take care of a diaper rash and how to just walk with the baby and not, and be comfortable doing multiple things at a time. And I had friends that were helping us with the childbirthing process. And these are all women that are coming through to support and help me. And I'm so grateful that I have this tribe.
That's awesome. And I think sometimes it's not the tribe that you think that you need. It's the tribe that you end up being able to rely on, right? And everyone steps up in their own way. I just think that's beautiful. Your story has been so inspirational. Your previous time that you joined us on the podcast and we talked about the IVF journey, we had so many comments and so much feedback about it. A lot of it was through direct messages because people who struggle with whatever they struggle with are nervous and scared and apprehensive about sharing it. And I said this to you last time, like your willingness to talk about things that we don't normally talk about, both in the Punjabi community and just female society in general, I think is really inspirational. And I cannot be happier for anyone. One, because your daughter is like a little baby hummingbird and she's the cutest little munchkin I've ever seen. But also I know that the contentment and the happiness that you and your husband have is just like overwhelming. I can feel it as soon as I walk into your house. So I think that's awesome.
Really?
Yes. So congratulations to you.
And also, I will not stop advocating for women that are suffering. I'm not going to stop. I'm just not going to stop fighting for them because we all deserve this.
Yes.
We should all be able to experience this if this is what we want.
And to our listeners, send us your questions, tell us what you think, and as always, thanks for listening.